The American middle class was once the backbone of the economy, but it's quickly shrinking. Did you ever dream of just, having a house? That's pretty much it. Just like owning a house. That's like the one thing that you're like, I want to work hard and not have to pay rent. Yeah, if you've ever had such crazy expectations or any of that, if you've ever had such crazy dreams like that, then, after World War II, a single income person could buy a house. The wife didn't even work. The man worked as a postman, and that was perfectly sufficient to afford a house. Can't really do that anymore. I mean, both of you could have good jobs. Let's say one of you is currently, if you manage to even land a job in the first place, both of you could have the average income, and yeah, you're not gonna get a house. Not only is the median price of a house in all of the US, yes, there are some parts that are less expensive than others, but the median price is $420,000. So not only that, but then you have to pull up a 6 to 7% interest rate. So yeah, good luck with that. In the 70s, 60% of Americans were considered middle class, and now it's 50%. But honestly, I feel it feels like it's even worse than that. I think it's mostly that wages have not kept up with inflation. Even though technically on paper, 50% of people are middle class, what you can get as middle class, I feel is very different from what you used to be able to get. Housing is extremely expensive, but we're talking also about every other thing that you spend money on. So groceries are up, property insurance, car insurance, just everything since COVID, basically. The inflation has just gotten out of hand. Yeah, the government printed a bunch of money and that caused everything to skyrocket. As I'm editing this video on August 22nd, 2025, Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed, just talked, and this is what he said. And I will play the clip of what he said right after this. It kind of seems to me like things could go either way right now. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, but the tariffs aren't really helping the price things. It is speculated that maybe tariffs are a one-time increase. I just feel like people are tapped out regardless of whether it's a one-time thing or not.
The effects of tariffs on consumer prices are now clearly visible. We expect those effects to accumulate over coming months with high uncertainty about both timing and amounts. The question that matters for monetary policy is whether these price increases are likely to materially raise the risk of an ongoing inflation problem. A reasonable base case is that the effects will be relatively short-lived, a one-time shift in the price level. Of course, one time does not mean all at once. It will continue to take time for tariff increases to work their way through supply chains and distribution networks. Moreover, tariff rates continue to evolve, potentially prolonging the adjustment process. It's also possible, however, that the upward pressure on prices from tariffs could spur a more lasting inflation dynamic, and that is a risk to be assessed and managed. One possibility is that workers who see their real incomes decline because of higher prices demand and get higher wages from employers, setting off adverse wage-price dynamics. Given that the labor market is not particularly tight and faces increasing downside risks, that outcome does not seem likely. Another possibility is that inflation expectations could move up, dragging actual inflation with them.
And then there's just a ton more debt too. People took out debt to go to college, which ended up being pretty useless, but they did. They took out debt to go to college, so now they owe a bunch of money on top of consumer debt, which, you have, when you're so deep in the hole, then you don't care about being deeper in the hole. So there's things like the buy now, pay later, and just general consumer debt. It's just getting worse and worse. If you already owe $30,000 of student loans, then what's another $10,000? Then what's another $10,000 of credit cards? I'm not saying that that's the way that you should think, but I think a lot of people are probably falling into thinking that way. At the end of all the debt, having to rent, and all the other multitude of expenses that have also skyrocketed, yeah, there's no money left over. So how do you even get a house? So about 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. But even if you're not living paycheck to paycheck, let's say that you were able to save $20,000 a year or something, right, for a down payment. It would take you so long to actually be able to put a down payment on a house, especially with a 6-7% interest rate. And that's assuming that they don't get increased, because that's also a possibility. I think there still is a middle class, but just what is middle class is very different from what it used to be. I'd say middle class is you're getting by, you're not You're not like really like struggling per se, but you're not like, taking multiple vacations. You're not treating yourself to things as much. Maybe you're eating out less, things like that. Like you're way more limited. And, I guess there's like you could solve this problem by moving to a state that isn't as expensive, because then you wouldn't spend as much and things wouldn't, but then your wages are lower. So I don't know. It just feels like like the meme of the guy on the bike and then he puts a stick and then he falls. It's kind of like that. But I don't think people are doing it intentionally. Like, I think that this just is the situation. I don't know how it gets fixed. There's still ways out of this situation, but you have to bootstrap yourself a lot more than I feel like people previously had to do. You can pick yourself up by the bootstraps, but I guess I hate this unacknowledgement that it's harder. like we should just acknowledge that it's harder, and Gen Z is not lazy, and they kind of did all the right stuff, and you're just probably going to feel poorer than your parents. You're probably going to feel poorer than your parents because you just can't afford the same stuff. But even certain old people are struggling because, like, for example, there's a whole condo crisis in Florida where the old people kind of like, they expected to only pay a certain amount of money for their cost of living, and then now there's special assessments and insurance and stuff that's like going above the threshold of what they prepared to retire on. So it's not just young people getting effed right now, like it's pretty much everybody. Now, in terms of how we fix this issue, I have no idea. I'm not like, I have a film degree, okay? I have no idea how the problem gets fixed. I just know that it is a problem. I know that Gen Z isn't lazy. I guess there's basically what I foresee. There's two options. Is like option one, we go into some sort of recession and things, and there's like a lot of pain at the beginning, but it equalizes over time. Or we just keep printing money and it gets even worse. Like the government debt is like really like just like the craziest it's been ever. I think that the government might potentially try to kick the can down the road, but that's just going to increase inflation. So I don't know. It feels like we're kind of at a turning point where something's got to give, whether it gives this way or it gives that way. But something's got to give. It doesn't seem like very sustainable. I also don't fully believe in this whole like we should just take money from the rich kind of thing. It definitely does seem like CEOs are paid more than they should. But I also am not like, oh, we should tax them 90% or whatever. I mean, I think generally millionaires do contribute to jobs in society and new developments and things like that. So I don't think the solution, I guess some people will say the solution is just tax the rich. I don't know. I think that the government just has to stop printing money. Like we just got to go through the pain, I think. But I don't know. I'm not an economist.